Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this presentation of Back to School. My name is Guy Shiraki, and I serve as the CEO of the Chester County Chamber. I want to thank our panelists and our sponsors for being with us today, and all of you for joining us. Like most of our events during this time period, we will have this available through our webpage, and also after the event, we'll send everyone a list of participants so you'll be able to continue any conversations you would like, or to continue networking as we do here in Chamber World. There's certainly no topic that's more in the news, whether it's in your local neighborhood or anywhere else. It is a national, international, and local story, and that is what will school be like this fall? How will things work? And whether you have an interest in this because you're a parent or grandparent, or because you're an employer, or because you're looking to continue your education towards some sort of certification or career advancement, this issue impacts you. The men and women who've joined us today are not only experts in their field and executives at their places of employment, but they've been part of the group of folks who've been thinking about how to provide education to their customers and the greater public this fall, and many of them had to adapt to the changes in the spring. Through the men and women assembled today, we are covering education from pre-K up through advanced and doctor degrees. So if you're interested in this topic, there's no stone that won't be left unturned. Again, I would remind you, as we did at the outset, if you have a question, please put it into the chat or the Q&A, and we will do our best to get to them. Any questions we don't get to that are listed there, we will follow up with you after the fact. And if you have a question, later this afternoon or later this week, feel free to contact us at the Chamber, and we'll try and connect you with one of the appropriate panelists to get you the answer. I would say at the outset, obviously, these folks understand a great deal about the challenges and opportunities presented for this fall, but obviously some very personal questions or individual questions about your particular education choices or those impacting your children might be hard to answer, but feel free to ask and we'll do the best that we can. With that, I'm going to introduce the panelists here. As you can see assembled, we shared their backgrounds ahead of time. It would take us the entire program to read most of their resumes, so I'll just simply introduce them and their institution they're representing. Representing Westchester University, we have Dr. Chris Fiorentino. Representing the Chester County Intermediate Unit, Dr. George Fiore. Downingtown Area School District, Dr. Troy Podell. From Achievement Cyber Charter School, Don Asplen. And Dr. Marian McGorry from Delaware County Community College. I want to thank you all for being with us. In addition, we have our sponsors that are with us, Comcast Internet Essentials, Caitlin Ganley, who'll be speaking in a moment. And then we're going to have some closing remarks from Dave Hackett. Dave is a partner at the firm of Cozen O'Connor, our chair-elect, and in fact, Dave is presenting a topic or a presentation on this subject in the next 24 hours and has been giving it a great deal of thought, particularly in advising employers and institutions of education what to do. Our programs at the Chamber are supported by not only your participation as individual members, but underwritten by our corporate sponsors. Caitlin happens to be, in addition to being the sponsor for today's event, serves as a member of our board and our executive board, serving as our corporate secretary. And if you live in the Delaware Valley, we don't need to explain to you what Comcast is, but Caitlin's going to talk for a moment about their Internet Essentials program and the offerings there. So I'm going to turn it over to Caitlin to talk about Comcast and the exciting opportunities for all of us in the services they're providing. So I'm going to put my microphone on mute. Caitlin, the floor is yours. You'll have to unmute your mic.
Thank you, Guy. On behalf of Comcast and our Internet Essentials team, I want to thank Guy, our panelists, and all of you for joining our virtual program today. As a community, we can come together to navigate our new normal. Comcast has the nation's largest Wi-Fi network in the US with over 18 million hotspots. While we're all focused on COVID, Comcast is working to help bridge the digital divide through our Internet Essentials program. Internet Essentials addresses the affordability gap by providing broadband service for $9.95 per month for low-income residents. People living in low-income communities are 10 times more likely to not have an internet connection at home compared to people in more affluent communities. 8 million people nationwide are now connected through Internet Essentials, with over 680,000 of those people living right here in Pennsylvania. In 2019, Comcast announced the program's largest expansion since its inception in 2011, and we now offer Internet Essentials to any low-income resident. Comcast also launched sponsored service agreements to support those who cannot afford the $9.95 per month. This gives a school district or a community partner the opportunity to purchase internet on behalf of a larger group, such as students, community members, or anyone else who may be eligible for the program. Again, on behalf of Comcast, we are honored to sponsor this event, and we look forward to learning more from our panel. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Guy.
Thank you, Caitlin. Thanks, Comcast, for your support for today's event and many of our events throughout the year. So to begin this, I'm going to ask an opening question to each panelist, who will each have obviously a slightly different perspective on this. And again, I'll remind you, if you have a question, please feel free to enter it in the Q&A box or in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to them. So the first question, and we'll start with Dr. Fiorentino, and that is, how are you handling reopening and the classes this fall? What's the approach that Westchester will be taking? You'll need to unmute.
There I go. Thank you, Guy. Good morning, everyone. Well, it's been quite a roller coaster ride over the summer. Like many people, we started out, we announced in June that we were going to open face-to-face. At that point, we were not in the green zone, but we anticipated being in the green zone, and I guess hoped. And one of the things I'll say is hope is not a great strategy ever, but certainly in this situation, and that has come to roost a little bit. But anyway, we took a look at what the constraints would be in terms of social distancing and masks and other protocols, and we set about to plan and have face-to-face classes in the fall and populate our residence halls. We have 5,100 beds in our residence halls, and we thought we could do that. What we quickly started to realize was that the virus was not progressing as predicted over the course of the summer. We were told to expect that it would be in decline in the warmer weather. We didn't really see that. As we took a look at what it meant to be face-to-face in a socially distanced environment, we realized that we were only going to be able to get about 40% of the students into our classes. The more we thought about that, the more we thought about how we're going to deliver education. As we looked at the progression of the virus, we decided in the second week of July to change course, and we announced that we were going basically fully remote with a few exceptions based on some programmatic needs. We also released all of the students from their residence hall commitments. We did have not only 5,100 commitments, we had a waiting list. At this point, that number has dwindled down to below 600. We're focused on primarily on students who have a need to be on campus, either because of a program or because of whatever their own housing arrangements are outside of school. So we're operating at really below 10% or so of our housing, a little above 10%. But anyway, so we're going fully remote. We're operating the campus at about 50% based on being in the green. And our biggest fear, frankly, and for the schools that are going to go ahead and open, the biggest fear will be, what if we get 2, 3, 4 weeks into the semester and we have a severe uptick or a death or something, and then we have to bail the way that we did in the spring. So we have taken that off the table. We gave the faculty 6 weeks to prepare. We're confident that we can deliver high quality programs, but that's what we're planning to do at this point.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that perspective and the challenges you must have faced. Now I'm going to turn it over for the same question to Dr. George Fiore, who's the Executive Director of the Chester County Intermediate Unit. George, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thank you, Guy, and good morning, everyone. So currently at the Chester County Intermediate Unit, we're reviewing all of our school districts' reopening plans, as well as the data gathered from our own 9 reopening task force focus groups. And that consists of over 500 staff members, students, and family members. So we're looking to get a lot of input on the comfortability, as well as getting some of the data and science behind what our plans are to open. At this time, we're planning for in-person, virtual, and hybrid learning options to accommodate the plans of each of our sending schools, because we have 12 sending schools across the county. And along with our district superintendents, we're working in collaboration with the Chester County Department of Health, the Department of Education, and the CEOs from Penn Medicine and Mainline Health. The program options offered to our students at the IU this fall will be dependent on our sending school district plans, as well as the current health and safety plans, conditions that we have across the county. We're getting really granular lately. We're looking at municipalities, and so that we can really target what our plans will be. Additionally, at the IU, we're leaders in professional development and online learning. We provide online learning for Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, as well as the Southeast region here in Pennsylvania. So we're not only preparing our own staff for the fall, but assisting districts for their opening day, however they choose to begin the school year. It's important to note it is a daunting and monumental task, but I believe we're ready for it, and I'm confident that our school districts are, because we've been working all summer together in planning. Actually, this planning started back in April, and our schools are the center of our communities, and the precautions and safeguards that we put in place do not just protect our students. I know we're looking at just students. In many cases, we have to think about the over 6,000 staff members that are also included. And we also have to think about protecting the entire community. So there's 86,000 kids, 6,000 educators, and they attend somewhere in Chester County come this fall. They ride on buses, they go to stores, they go to a dentist, and they eventually go home. So getting this right is not only critical for the health of our schools, but all of Chester County. And I do want to point out, think about when whooping cough and pertussis would come in our schools. If we had just a few outbreaks, we were closing schools, and those have a vaccine. This is a whole new world for us in education, and we're trying to listen to medical professionals, because this is a medical issue, and that's what's guiding a lot of our work.
Thank you, George. Next, from the school district perspective, Dr. Troy Podell. Troy is with the Downingtown Area School District, and he's going to share their insights and their perspective as how they're approaching education across K-12. With that, Troy, the floor is yours.
Thank you kindly, Guy, and good morning, all. Wonderful to see familiar faces on the panel with me, folks that I partner with through the school district. And I want to underscore or ditto, I suppose, the comments of Dr. Fiorentino and Dr. Fiore. Our school district, back in the spring, engaged in a robust fact-finding mission, put together various reopening task forces, and has done really a terrific job of taking the pulse of the community, in addition to following the advice and guidelines laid down by various government entities that are relevant to managing this pandemic response. I'm incredibly proud also of our school board of directors, our superintendent, and our administrative cabinet, who, in taking those data points into account, the pulse of the community, the science, the fact that the largest uptick in Chester County in terms of population for this disease now has been in the 15 to 30-year-old range, and made a very responsible call and a bold call, being the first school district in the area to make the determination that for the first marking period through November the 5th, we were going to be in an all virtual environment. We have been preparing behind the scenes as a curriculum department and as a school district, working to train up our teachers to become expert cyber teachers, to learn how to navigate that environment in a way that best responds to the needs of kids and best maximizes their educational opportunities. We're very excited that we have been developing cyber options concurrent with the Downingtown Area School District curriculum that will be available to all of our students, K-12, in our core and on-core classes. It's been quite the administrative undertaking, but our teachers and our administration have really picked up the baton and ran with it here. It's been quite amazing to think that the analogy that I provide for my partners in business is, imagine that you are a trucking company and you have a fleet of really well-trained truckers. They are excellent at what they do. They've been trained up for years and years, and they are just kicking butt at trucking. And then they show up to work on Monday morning and they're told, you're piloting a steamship, go. And that's essentially what the pandemic did. Those truckers would have some degree of knowledge to how to pilot the steamship. You know, steering wheels are steering wheels, I suppose, but wouldn't understand necessarily the nuances of the currents and nautical terminology, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's essentially the position that our teachers found themselves in. And they did a phenomenal job this spring navigating that uncertainty. School districts and schools tend to be larger entities that are not necessarily known for agility. They're known for being very deliberative and procedural. I am also proud of our district for taking on the challenge of being agile, having to adapt to ever-changing environments. I think that's something that all of us on the panel are learning to add to our skill set in a major way. So in summation, we're very proud of what the digital offering will be for our kids, that we're able to do so in a manner that is consistent with their safety and in their best educational interests as well.
Thank you, Troy. Next, we're going to go to Don Asplen. Don is the CEO of Achievement Cyber Charter. To a certain extent, online and distance learning have been your wheelhouse, but no doubt you have faced challenges with not only your students, but your staff and the families who are of your students. So with that, if you please let us know your approach for the fall as well. So thanks for being with us, Don.
I thank you to you and the Chamber for your tireless efforts to keep the community that we all live and work in up to date. And a quick shout out to Caitlin. Caitlin, your program is so vital to what we do. 70% of my students are economically disadvantaged, and a good number of them take advantage of the Comcast Essentials program. So a hearty thank you as well. So as Guy said, cyber is nothing new for us, but what is it that we are trying to do differently? How are we approaching the return to education in the fall? And the answer for us has been to try and dig deeper into the social and emotional aspects of what our students and families are going through. Are they wrestling with mom or dad maybe not being employed? What is the anxiety of COVID-19? What was the impact of maybe not being able to walk through a graduation ceremony when that has been a goal for so many of them? So for the first time ever, we have hired a social worker that can offer counseling services. We are instituting what we're going to call a concierge desk to help new students on board, because cyber is not for everyone. That is clear. We educate 38,000 students collectively in the state, which is, 2.1% of the 1.8 million students. It is not for everyone. What is clear is that it takes a while to get used to it. So we're also doubling the number of what we call mentors. A mentor, think of a mentor as a big brother or big sister. They're not handing out grades. There's someone that you can talk to, that can get to a teacher, that can marshal the resources that you might need. So we're going to double the number of those folks to help onboard not only our students, but the families as well, because again, this is impacting more than just students. It's impacting the entire family. So our approach, in short, has been to think about how can we have the backs, put our arms around and support the entire families and what they're going through, not just from a standards and assessments perspective, although we certainly comply with the Common Core, but more importantly now with COVID-19 and the pivoting that everyone's talking about after the pandemic, how can we help support the entire complete student? And that's been our approach to reopening.
Thanks very much. Our next panelist is Dr. Marian McGorry. Dr. Marian is with Delaware County Community College, which provides services and educations to literally thousands of Chester County residents at a number of campuses. I can only imagine the challenges that you're facing. So thank you for being with us. Thanks for all you do for our economy here in Chester County. I'm going to turn the floor over to you for your approach and how you're approaching this fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Guy. Good morning, everyone. at Delaware County Community College, we had an emergency response plan because of the SARS problem that we had a few years ago. But we realized very quickly it did not at all address any of the issues that we were facing with COVID-19. So we have hired an industrial hygiene company as the consultant who came in, who showed us how to clean the buildings, how to adhere to the CDC guidelines. They trained our staff so that anyone entering our buildings has his or her temperatures taken, and then each person receives a wristband. I have mine on today. And of course, everyone is required to wear a mask, and this will continue until we no longer have to do that. We have for the fall approximately 140 credit and non-credit sections that are available face-to-face for our students. The remainder of our sections, which is a good majority of our sections, are scheduled for remote delivery. We do, though, offer in some of our courses a asynchronous and synchronous format. So synchronous, the format involves the instructor actually meeting with students at a scheduled time and day as they would if they were in the classroom. So that is a little different from what we did in the spring. And in addition to our Marple campus, we have 5 branch campuses, and 3 of those campuses will be open. Our Exton campus, of course, in Chester County, our Penix Bridge campus in Chester County, and our Southeast Center in Delaware County. Tutoring for students will be virtual. While in the green phase, we learned that our students really not want to come on campus. They prefer tutoring virtually, as they did the counseling for the most part. And all of our essential staff will continue working staggered hours on campus and off campus in a virtual remote schedule. And at our open locations, we'll do the same thing with staggered work hours, and staff will rotate days to ensure everyone's safety. We do clean every room after somebody has used it.
Thank you very much. Our last panelist is Jim Lewis. Jim is with Cheyney University, and he oversees operations for the campus. I'm sure he's faced many of the challenges and some different challenges in trying to meet the needs this fall. So Jim, thank you for being with us. Thank you for the service as well you provide to the students in the community around Cheyney. And with that, the floor is yours. And again, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Guy, and good morning, everyone. So at Cheyney, we're a little bit different. We're smaller. We're a bit more distant from the borough and towns around us. So we and our president, President Walton, has decided we're going to be face-to-face in the fall. Our numbers, again, are smaller, and we have the ability to lock down our front gates so we can at least screen everybody. So our approach is and has been, we screen everybody coming onto campus every day. Temperatures at the gate, license plates to the extent we can to have local tracing, and we are making it work for us as best we can. I have freshmen moving in right now, and we start school on Monday, and we wrap up by Thanksgiving, so we move the term up. Again, we're all playing the guessing game as to what's really going to happen. We are ready to flex and adjust if we go back to yellow or if we go back to red. Our provost has been very engaged with our faculty in terms of providing those alternative teaching methods. But for us, we've adjusted all of our labs, our classrooms, our food and beverage venues to maximize social distancing, just as I'm sure everyone else is doing. We have really tightened up our code of conduct for students in terms of making sure everyone is wearing PPE every day, all day. And we're really putting a lot of onus on our students and having them put peer pressure on each other to make sure they're always wearing PPE of some kind. We are exploring a lot of different partnerships with external folks in terms of potential actual daily testing and digital tracing. And we have telemed arrangements in place as well. So we're excited actually to have our students back on campus, and we're looking forward to really having a good term. Back to you, Guy.
Thank you very much. So we have one other question. Again, I would remind our participants, if you have a question, please feel free to submit it either in the Q&A box on Zoom or through the chat, and we'll do our best to get through them. We're going to go in reverse order. So Jim, we'll start with you and then work back through our panelists in reverse order. And that is this. Were there lessons learned, one or two things that you learned from the spring, from that sudden pivot that everybody had to make in March or April? Lessons learned that helped guide you in your approach to the fall?
Absolutely. So in the spring, at spring break, when this all hit for us, we actually had upwards of at least 100 students that stayed on campus simply because of their personal situations in terms of access to internet and home situations. So we were able to hang on to 100 students through the spring term, which taught us a lot. It taught us a lot about the social distancing. It taught us a lot about really how to help students have PPE and wear PPE. It taught us how to really guide us on where we should tighten up our code of conduct. It taught us how to really have safe food venues for our food and beverage. Everything's grab and go. And then in the summertime, we had about 50 kids on campus for our summer probationary program. Also was a good soft start for us. Now, we're a little bit unique because we're small in numbers, but yes, and we thankfully have had some really good luck. And I've actually been very pleased with the screening. I thought we'd have resistance to screening, people not wanting to have their temperatures taken, not wanting to have questionnaires answered. We have a little QR code that you hit when you come onto campus, and I've been very pleasantly surprised that people are willing and have been cooperating in the screening in some of those processes that we put in place.
Thank you. Marian?
At Delaware County Community College, we learned that we could actually work remotely. Our faculty also learned that they could teach remotely in a remote modality. And we've learned that our students are amazingly resilient, given that many of our students are not a traditional college age and have other responsibilities. So we did, that was our primary takeaway from the spring. At the college, we did increase the number of professional development sessions we offered for our faculty, colleagues, helped colleagues to improve how they teach in a remote modality and to ensure our students are learning and keeping with the learning objectives and the appropriate outcomes. The professional development sessions are continuing throughout the summer for our faculty, and we will continue those workshops into the fall. Faculty are giving other faculty workshops, so it works out very nicely. There's a real collegiality with this. Our STEM faculty had to rethink how to offer science labs online. They had not done that, although other schools and universities, institutions have done that. They did reach out to one of their colleagues at Westchester University to find out what they were doing. They've had time to revisit the learning materials that they and their students will use to ensure they're providing the same content virtually. We had time to learn from our colleagues at other community colleges in the state who are also experiencing the same circumstances that we were. And we found out that we could share information, and it really was very helpful to all of us. And I think I did address in my answering the earlier question some of the other areas that we learned during the spring semester.
Thank you. Don, lessons learned from the spring?
So, look, leaders tend to be doers, right? I mean, I'd like to think that we're rule followers. And in education, we have the common cause of everyone's most precious asset, their children, right? So the thing that we learned, one of our panels used the term earlier, is agility. And I always like to have plan B, and I learned plan B is not enough. Everyone needs a C and a D. I mean, how many times in the past have we had to sort of coordinate all of these different organizations, the CDC, the Department of Health, Department of Labor, the Federal Department of Education, the State Department. They're normally in concert with one another. Sometimes during this, they've not been exactly in sync. You'll get advice from one person, then the advice will change. Very fluid. Not that everyone's trying to do the right thing, and we understand that. So we would put together a plan only to find out that 2 weeks later, that plan would need to be modified based on something new that someone learned. So trying to marry the emotions that go along with our families and their most precious asset, their student, with following all of the rules and the guidelines that we are all as educators bound by on a federal, state, and sometimes a local level has been the challenge for us. So I've coined a little phrase I think it's going to catch. Patience is a virtue. You sort of need to bide your time, put a couple plans together, and keep everyone calm. It was more important for us to keep the staff calm and not have a knee-jerk reaction and sort of let things ferret themselves out a little bit before we made hard decisions. And that's the lesson that I think that we learned.
Thank you. George, lessons learned?
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Don said in many ways. And what we found is that there's, and I think it's for good intentions, as we get an understanding of this disease, as well as the guidance changes quite frequently, you have to have multiple plans, which makes it very difficult to plan appropriately because you want to put your resources in the proper place to open school. I had a unique, I'll call it unique opportunity to look at this from multiple perspectives. You know, I'm a dad of 3 school-age children. So, you know, between my wife and I both working and managing it, managing education, managing work, and with 2 professionals in the house and a 6-year-old, 11-year-old and a 13-year-old, you can imagine what that looks like if you've been through that. I've also been able to go through that as an employer with over 1,700 employees, and trying to navigate how do we support a wide variety of needs for all of our staff members, and making sure that they're staying employed, they can take care of their families, and providing the proper care that they need. Also taking care of, we have 12 school districts, and we met, one of the lessons learned is communication was critical during this time. We met daily for 4 months with the superintendents in the county. Now we meet twice a week, but we're also meeting with various constituent groups. We brought in medical professionals throughout this because, as I said earlier, this is a medical issue, and we need their guidance because it turns into an educational issue when the medical professionals don't agree, which we're seeing right now. There's a lot of consternation on what we should do. So being agile, being flexible, and lastly, the lessons learned instructionally. You know, that was pandemic teaching in the spring. It will look nothing like that in the fall. You know, at the IU, we've been providing online education for over 15 years across the Commonwealth, similar to how Don does. And we've been training our staff, we've been training staff members across the county so they can deliver instruction. And I'll, as a lead into Chris, I'm also a professor in the PASHE system, and seeing the challenges for post-secondary education and training and getting staff ready to go. But I think we'll see quite a change across the Commonwealth in the landscape of education this fall.
Thank you, George. Troy, lessons learned from the spring as you tried to plan for the fall?
I think I'm going to underscore George's point as well as Don's. As educators, we train teachers to be very good at proactive management, lesson planning, almost down to the minute sometimes of what you're going to do when you're with your kids, and working out that reactive management muscle was an important lesson. The need for communication, absolutely. The need for capacity building in the online education environment, absolutely. So it's training our people to drive the steamship really well, as to extend the analogy, and while still keeping their skills sharp at driving the truck. I'd also say, since we're here talking about people's kids, the biggest lesson I learned in the spring is that Generation Z is amazing. They're awesome. This group of kids is the first group, I think, that is always going to be becoming. We tend to think of ourselves in Gen Y, Gen X, and those of us perhaps older than Gen X as fixed a little bit, or that we've become something and that we identify that way. Generation Z is much more fluid, much more adaptable. This is the first generation that was raised with the proliferation of growth mindset, psychology and theory. So I think if there's any generation that has that capacity to respond really well to these sets of adverse circumstances, it's our kids right now. They're really amazing.
Well said.
I don't know how to react to the all of us clustered in the other, because as a proud member of one of those other groups. But anyway, Chris, lessons learned at Westchester University that helped guide your decision-making and planning for the fall. What are they?
Well, at the risk of being a little redundant here, the term that came to mind when I saw that you were going to ask this question was agility. There's no denying it. We happened to be on spring break when this started to unravel. We decided to extend spring break for a second week at the point where we announced that we were going fully remote. Institutions of higher learning are not known for being nimble or agile organizations, but not only did we completely pivot our program delivery, we completely pivoted how we run the university. Everybody left campus except for absolutely essential personnel, and we ran this university remotely with a couple days of preparation, and it ran fine. It really surprised me how agile we were in responding to this. And of course, faculty are famous for being deliberative, as has been mentioned, but the faculty, they got it. They understood that, this was, they love to beat up the president when things don't go the right way. And they realized this wasn't my fault. I didn't do this. We were doing the best we could. And they dug in and they kept going. And of course, one of our advantages, we do offer quite a few online programs. So we weren't starting from scratch, but we had a lot of faculty who had not done remote teaching or online teaching. So just the confidence that we can adapt quickly when we have to was certainly important. I think the other key thing is that it was really a damage control situation, as has been alluded to. We reacted quickly. We did the best we could. In this case, we've had plenty of time to plan, and we're going into this much better organized. The faculty have had the summer to do training. Those are the members of the faculty who have not had a lot of experience with this. So we are coming into a different world. But the interesting thing is that we learned some things about how we can operate this place, and we may look at certain aspects of the operation and say, we don't need to have that on campus. And I'm not going to identify any specific offices and have people freak out as a result, but we can step back and take a look at whether certain aspects of what we do we can provide employees the option to work from home and cut some of our on-campus needs. So it really opens up a whole new opportunity to rethink how we operate as an organization, both academically and as an operation of about 2,000 employees running a large organization.
Thank you. I would remind our audience to continue to submit questions via the chat or the Q&A, and we'll do our best to get through them. I'm going to try and go through these as quickly as we can. This is sort of, if you will, this is the rapid fire portion of our program. Don, a question for you is, in light of the changing delivery of education, have you seen an uptick in registration or inquiries as parents were looking to online education with your school?
So with my school, the answer would be, it's been a slight increase, but I am only grades 7 to 12, and families want to keep their students together. So if they have someone in K to 6, we're not a good choice for them. There are other cyber schools that have seen a larger uptick. And there's a fear that there's going to be this mass exit to the cyber schools. Yeah, we don't think so, because, as I said, we educate 2% of the 1.8 million students. If we could double capacity, which I don't know how I could hire that many teachers, it would be 4%. We'd go from 38,000 to 76,000 kids at a 1.8 million. It's just not that big of a number. So while we think that we will stretch our capacity, we don't have a sense that everyone's going to desert their public school. And again, cyber is not for everyone. It's for a particular type of student. So we've seen an uptick, but it's not been a mad dash.
Thank you. Troy, question is, and perhaps others as well, for your students that are from lower income or disadvantaged families, for some of the additional services you provide, certainly George, you're involved as well. How have you found, and what will be the approach? How have you found the challenge of keeping an eye on them, getting them services, everything from meals to other support or counseling services, particularly when you may not be seeing them eye to eye or they're not at a centralized location?
Well, and that, Guy, really is a story of our staff's sense of care for their kids and their ability to rally in their interest. Firstly, I'd be remiss if like Don, I didn't thank Caitlin for the amazing program that Comcast offers. So many of our students, situated as they are, take advantage of the Comcast Essentials program. So thank you so much for it. It's an integral lifeline in these times for our kids. As a district, we've been providing meals for all of our kids K to 12 in a curbside pickup manner where folks are coming in and you know, we're getting them their things. Same is true of technology. We've been working very hard with our phenomenal technology department to coordinate getting devices into kids' hands. You know, we've been a one-to-one school district for a few years now. Our kids grades 6 to 12 have had personal devices, be it iPads or laptops or a bring your own device arrangement for a number of years. Our kids K to 5 would access those devices while they were in the school building and they would stay there. So being able to push out those devices that were in areas of need was, thank goodness, more of a logistical challenge than a financial one. And we were very lucky to be in that position.
Thank you. Question for the schools. So I guess the core of education is education, traditional learning, math, science, reading, writing, what have you. But a lot of part of the educational experience are extracurricular activities, from sports to clubs and things of that nature, visiting businesses, visiting historic sites. How are you each trying to deal with those extra things, from clubs to sports to activities, trips, internships? How are you trying to provide those services to your students in these times where things are quite different? Anybody want to try and jump out at that first?
Sure, Guy, I can do that.
Thanks.
So, and across the county, you're seeing a variety of approaches. This month, you'll see health and safety plans being approved for athletics and extracurriculars. I put in the chat the map of the entire Commonwealth with what each school district is submitting to the Department of Education. So you can take a look at what's out there. So there's a variety of approaches. The challenge, and the governor, I believe, came out with a statement on, I'll use sports as the first one, and he said online only schools shouldn't play sports in the fall. And I think this is the challenge every school district is dealing with. When you go to English class, you must be separated by 6 feet, wear a mask, and we have extreme protocols. But at 3 o'clock, they open those doors and they will be engaged for 2 straight hours in close proximity, possibly tackling each other in those contact sports. That dichotomy is very difficult to explain to parents why that's allowed. But then when you go to English class, that is far more dangerous, where you need a mask, social distancing. So I think you're going to see that evolve over the next 3 weeks. Hopefully for the benefit of our kids, we'll see a downturn in the COVID cases that maybe could open it up. So I think that's just one example. Teletherapy is one of the ways for mental health supports and extracurriculars. They're using telepractice for that, using online. I sat in a student council meeting for students across the county virtually. And I have to tell you, we have far more participation when we do it virtually. So we may have gathered some new information on how to deliver services. So that's just a small microcosm of some of the extracurricular.
Guy, let me jump in and touch on this. I wanted to pick up on George's point about athletics. We, for exactly that reason, we could not justify allowing even practices. We have the PSAC conference. The presidents are the board of the PSAC conference. And we, first of all, we shut down competition. And then the question was, do we even allow practice? And we said, we cannot allow students to be practicing if we've already decided that it's not safe to have students sitting in a classroom socially distanced with masks on. It just wasn't logical. So that was a pretty easy decision. The interesting thing I would observe more broadly, this is a very electronic generation. You know, somewhat to Troy's point, we're finding that they love doing business with the registrar and the bursar electronically. They buy everything online anyway. You know, I mean, this is not unusual for them. And we're providing a whole array of services, the health center, the counseling center. The students are able to have meetings of their organizations remotely. Internships, we've been in touch with businesses. It's amazing how many businesses can provide really meaningful internship opportunities remotely. So these things are all continuing on. There's just a lot of legwork. Troy, you used the term logistics a few minutes ago. The logistics of keeping all this stuff going is the real trick. But you know, it's keeping everybody safe.
Anyone else want to talk to the issue of activities? Yeah, Troy.
I think it's also important for us to recognize that that folds into, on some level, the social emotional learning piece that Don had mentioned so artfully earlier. You know, I was a 3-sport athlete in high school. I played football, I wrestled, and I ran track, and they were some of the most important and formative memories of my life in terms of character building and all of those things that are in what we would call, I guess, the implicit curriculum as educators of how to be a human being. And making sure that we're attentive to that is important as a challenge in the fall. I'd also underscore Dr. Fiorentino's point that sometimes pressure creates diamonds, and the pivot is an opportunity to try something a little bit different. We were planning in the spring to have a massive county-wide career fair at Downingtown West. We were anticipating a couple thousand students, and in partnership with Junior Achievement, which is a financial literacy education organization that we partner with, we were able to pivot to a virtual career fair format that had folks from all over the country, school districts all over the country were visiting us, quote unquote, and seeing what professionals in our region are doing and learning more about careers. So there is an opportunity for us to sort of lean into the latent advantages of the virtual format to super serve kids.
The question that has come up, I would throw out for each of you if you'd like to weigh in, and that is, as we're learning, your classes can be live. The classes or presentations may be recorded and watched later, or sometimes both. How are you balancing that in terms of monitoring students watching live versus recorded, and what are your thoughts in providing your classes and curriculum in that format? Anyone want to jump in and take on that? Marian?
Yeah, I'll be happy to start. For us, we offer developmental courses in reading, math, and writing, and our faculty, and English as a second language, and our faculty felt very strongly about offering live classes, those classes live, because they really wanted the interaction with the students, the real-time interaction with students. So they have many of those courses are at real time and live. And of course our skills courses are will be face-to-face, and we are just now finishing our spring semester for those students in those courses, because we offer a number of those programs at the college. So yes, depending on the discipline, for us, it was depending on the discipline and what the relationships were like prior to COVID, and how the faculty felt about teaching those courses is why we went with some of those courses live.
I'm putting into the chat now a link to our online learning plan as a school district that sort of explains the need for synchronous instruction was something that our parents indicated to us was vital. In the spring, we had given teachers autonomy to determine, are you going to offer synchronous instruction? Are you simply going to go the asynchronous route? And I wouldn't throw asynchronous instruction under the bus by any stretch of the imagination. My master's degree and my doctoral degree were both entirely asynchronous online. And I feel like I learned a lot and that it was worth every penny I paid. So I'll throw that out there. But the synchronous option for engagement is something that parents have said that they wanted. And so we were able to sort of use the skeleton of the school schedule to be able to provide that in a bit of a different way online.
Thank you. Yeah,
Guy,
Chris.
may I-
Oh, yeah, Jim. No, wait, I lost. Go ahead. Chris.
Okay, well, we leave it up to the faculty. Our goal is to provide as many options to them as possible. This option, for example, is very common, where we would use a Zoom framework and they can post documents. I'm sure you've all seen how that model works. One of the things we were working on when we anticipated going face-to-face was we put cameras and microphones in every classroom, 229 or something or other. And so the faculty actually have the option at this point to go into an empty classroom and to beam their lecture, to write on the board the same way as if they were lecturing to a live class, and have the class zoom in this format and actually watch the professor teach. So it's going to be a whole host of different things. We actually gave the lab-based courses the option to bring the students physically to campus. That was the one thing we were concerned about. And none of the faculty in the sciences, and Marian, you alluded to this earlier, none of the faculty in the sciences felt that they needed face-to-face. They felt they could do their labs remotely. We're doing some things with nursing, and if the student teaching is going to be face-to-face in any situations, we'll certainly participate in that. But the faculty are basically offered an array of tools, and they're deciding how they're going to structure their classes. And it's a pretty wide range of outcomes there.
Thank you. Don? Nope. I think you're frozen. So we'll come back. So Chris, you alluded to it. One of the other questions that came up, perhaps some of you may want to address, is what were, in terms of the any hardware or software things you needed, what were there challenges in acquiring things from cameras to PPE to thermometers? You know, were there challenges in acquiring that material, or even bandwidth? All of a sudden you're broadcasting hundreds of times to thousands of people. So if any of you'd like to address some of the challenges you faced in preparing in terms of hardware or software?
Well, I also would have to shout out to Comcast. You know, they were great. We did have to get hotspots and internet accessible devices to many of our students. We have about almost 25% of our students are Pell eligible, meaning they're low income. So that was a major logistical challenge, and we were able to do that with laptops and iPads that we had on campus. I think the trick with the PPE was to get your requests in early. If you waited too long to start trying to get things, the waiting lists were pretty long. But we jumped in pretty fast. We actually have 100,000 Westchester branded masks because we thought we were going to be face-to-face on campus. So I guess now we're going to give them away as souvenirs or something. I don't know when this is all over, but it was you had to be thinking quickly, identifying what the challenges were going to be, and then trying to find partners to work with to get it done.
If I could jump in.
Yep.
and just echo what Chris said, we also, thanks to Comcast, Caitlin, we were advising students to reach out to Comcast. We did buy hotspots for our students. We did for them for loaning, to loan. We loaned out hotspots. We loaned out about 150 laptops to our students. Our team was awesome because at some point, with limited or no transportation, we had folks, staff delivering laptops to students to their homes outside. So we had an awesome group who are still doing that, as a matter of fact. So we have made laptop loans available for our students, and we really want to make sure we remind faculty as well as students about that, because we understand you cannot do an online class on your phone. And students were trying that before COVID-19. So we try to emphasize that you really do need a full service and all of the hardware and software that's necessary. So yeah, I have to say the same thing. And our IT, I have to shout out to our IT folks. They were amazing. And we did exactly what Westchester did. We extended our spring break by 1 week to give our faculty time to pivot and to prepare. And really, our IT folks just stepped up beautifully. It really amazing. Real shout out to them.
Jim, I want to ask a question to you because of having a smaller campus and the way you described it earlier. So just to get a better understanding, to what extent, as you were describing what you're trying to do and what President Walton's trying to approach, it seemed almost to the analogy to sports, you're trying to create that bubble, that Cheyney is a bubble, and you're going to try and keep the students there. How are you going to try to do that with, I guess, some of the students are commuting and in terms of outsiders? And in other words, once the students are there, are they free to go to Philadelphia or Wilmington or Westchester, or are you really encouraging them to stay in that community and dealing with folks coming in from the outside, be they presenters or anyone else?
Well, Guy, you hit it right in the head. We have been calling it the Cheyney bubble. And, I'll echo a lot of the points that have been made by my excellent colleagues here on the panel, that we have a specific target audience that we're trying to serve in the community. And for us, having our students here with us and providing what we call a family style learning is really the driving and compelling thing has really driven our strategy in terms of trying to have face-to-face. And Chris's point is absolutely correct. We were lucky enough to get on the PPE requests early. So we have enough PPE, we feel, to really make a run at this. I mentioned earlier that we are locking down our front gates. So all of our students that are going to reside on campus are going to be parking on campus, and we'll have to park in a lot that is after our guard station. Commuters, the same thing. They are going to have to come onto campus and be screened, have their temperature taken every day. And if their temperature exceeds 100.4, we have other things in place. If in fact we do perceive any kind of threat, we have places where we can isolate. We have places where we can quarantine. We have our counselors and our physicians on campus as well. So in earnest, we really want to maintain our family style learning lifestyle. And we do have a considerable number of students that are first generation, and a number of students that really, if they're not here with us, we may not be able to keep them and retain them. So matriculating and retention are huge for us. And that's why I think we may be taking a little bit more of a risk, but we are working hard to create that bubble, as you stated, so we can really have the most impact for our students.
Thanks. And then I would throw this out for all of you. As a result of this, not only for this fall, but looking ahead, has this experience in providing education caused you to think about classes or skills or certificates? In other words, might you be expanding or changing some classes you offer? Are you going to offer Zoom 101 for people like me? And seriously, has this learning experience caused you to think about ways you may be trying to offer classes or certificate training or other expertise you may want to give to your students or maybe even older adults to help train them? Has there been any adjustment in your curriculum in that way as you look to plan ahead?
Guy, I'll jump in only because I've been, and Troy can probably attest to this, I've been pretty forward thinking in the way schools should look, particularly high schools. I was the founding headmaster of Downingtown STEM Academy back in 2010, 11. And I think this hopefully will push a lot of our schools and parents and our post-secondary partners to say, we don't need seniors in a seat all day long. I'll put on the parent hat. My 3 children will not be sitting in their high school classroom for 7.5 hours in their future. They should be out in internships. They could take some remote learning. They should be taking some college courses. I think this has the potential to open up what far more options for kids, which it's basically going to create a more agile economy, because we're going to get kids better prepared for the workforce, better prepared for post-secondary. And I'm hopeful it can latch on, but we'll see how that eventually goes. But I think it basically pushed the envelope in saying it can be done a different way, and it should be done a different way.
You know, the hybrid delivery is something that has been growing a lot, certainly on our campus and a lot of campuses. Faculty already are seeing the value of the kind of mix of things that George is talking about. And the nice thing about this is that there's a lot of faculty who had never contemplated doing it are now seeing that it's a really valuable approach to things. They're not just spending time sitting in the class. They're out doing things and you know, approaching it very differently. I would say in terms of the kinds of certificate things you're talking about, we would hope that our partner, Delaware County Community College, would be all over that kind of stuff, because I think that's in their sweet spot.
If I could jump in, thank you, Chris. Yes, we just had a 1-week virtual internship with Troy's students. It was a virtual STEM academy, virtual with the STEM Academy, virtual 1 week. It was very successful. We've been working with George's group too, and 7 of the Chester County schools. So we are very excited offering these kinds of virtual, we have really, our folks have stepped up because clinical sites are a problem for us right now in our allied health and nursing fields. So we have faculty who have developed internships, or refer to it as externships, that they have to send to an accrediting body to get approved to provide this type of experience virtually that someone would actually get on the job in a real internship. So in that respect, we have faculty who are very creative, who are doing those kinds of development when it comes to course development and changing. And if you have somebody who are really great idea folks, it really does allow them, give them some latitude to express and explore some different avenues. Our non-credit, when you talk about the Zoom 101, our non-credit area is, they are really chomping at the bit right now, because they really know that this is their wheelhouse and this is their opportunity. So we already have, and we put press releases out there already about COVID training and contact tracing and training. So that was available right away. We jumped right on that. And there are other areas that we are exploring in the non-credit world.
Thank you.
If I can, there, just
Troy, then Don.
What a phenomenal partner Delaware County Community College is to work with. We have this year offered for our students new programs that are dual enrollment career exploration programs in the areas of healthcare and education. We're looking to expand those offerings with Delaware County Community College into other professions. We are, to George's point, yes, looking to push our students to engage in more community engagement, internships, job shadow opportunities, even providing credits for working a part-time job, because we want students to be out there acquiring soft skills. We're also engaged in some really awesome conversations with Delaware County Community College about bringing an associate's degree to the high school program. Why not provide that quicker on-ramp for kids so that they could then enroll in a 4-year institution like a Westchester as an 18-year-old with 2 years of college already bought and paid for, and hasten their entry into the workplace. So yes, there's a lot of exciting opportunity that I think we need to be embracing in this as well.
Thanks. Don, you had a comment?
So just looking at the question from a slightly different perspective, you know, we have a technology onboarding that we've developed years ago that obviously all the students go through. So the issue that we're looking at this year is more of our teachers. So, you know, the research shows it takes 12 to 18 months to get a conventional teacher really comfortable in a cyber environment. Think about when you first started to drive a car. It was all you could do to keep 10 and 2 and look at all 3 rear view mirrors. You couldn't carry on a conversation and think about where you were going. Well, the same is true when you start cyber. You can't be focusing on what you're going to say, the slides, what's the volume, watch the chat box to make sure that kids aren't saying things they shouldn't be saying. It's a little overwhelming. But what we're trying to do now is to create micro-credentials, because that's really becoming in vogue in the industry, and not just the education around the world, to make sure that our teachers are staying up on the latest and greatest engagement and ed tech sort of technologies, not just for the purpose of working technology into it, but making sure that in this ever-increasing digital world, that our students are prepared to take on what lies ahead. So to do that, we have to make sure that we live by what we preach, is to say that we are lifelong learners. So we're creating opportunities for our teachers to gain micro-credentials in the art of teaching with technology in a digital world. And that's our focus this year.
I want to thank our panelists. We're going to have one final question for our panelists, and then we're going to hear some remarks from Dave Hackett. As I mentioned at the outset, Dave is not only our chair-elect, but he is a partner in the firm of Cozen O'Connor, and he won't say it, but I'll say it, an expert in the field of employment and human relations, and is going to share some insights for all of us, not only in the world of academia, but all of us as we head back to work in one form or another. The final question, I want to thank all the panelists. The final question for our panelists, and I'll begin with Dr. Fiorentino, we'll go back to our original order at the outset, is I know it's beginning of August, but we all have to plan. What will be your process and what is your timeline in terms of determining what January will look like? What will next semester? When do each of you see how you'll begin to think about planning for any changes, or how you'll present your services come the next semester? With that, Chris, thank you for being with us, and you're going to begin.
All right, Guy. Well, thank you for having me, and thanks to all the other panelists. It's been a great discussion. You know, I keep saying to my leadership team, and I think I may have even alluded to it earlier, hope is not a strategy. I think that there are a lot of people out there who are moving forward and hoping. You know, Jim, obviously you all are planning very thoughtfully for what you're trying to accomplish, and I've talked to President Walton. I understand that, and I wish you the best of luck. I think that's the best chance for success. At this point, we learned a lesson over the summer. We made some assumptions. We hoped things would break our way, and they didn't. And so we had to revert back to what we were doing in the spring. At this point, we have no idea. Even if there's a vaccine, and things are looking promising, and stock market's up again this morning because there's good vaccine news. But there's a difference between having a viable vaccine and having the population vaccinated, and when is that going to happen? And what would have to happen in order for a vaccine that's even approved in December to be widely enough applied so that we can go into the spring semester confident that that we have this under control? So we're going to watch, we're going to pay attention, we're going to again try to mid-course correct as much as we can. At some point, probably we'll announce a point at which we have to make a final decision for the spring, because people need to know that. Are we going to have students back in the residence halls? Are faculty going to be back face-to-face? We did that in the summer, basically. We said we have to let people know by July 15th, so they have time to plan. So that's what we will do. And at this point, honestly, I don't know. I can't tell you what we're going to be doing in the spring, because we have to wait and see what happens between now and then.
I think I'm next, Guy. You were muted. So across I'll provide a little bit of hope. As Dr. Fiorentino said, my dad used to say to me, "Hope is not a plan of action." So I hear my father now in my ear all morning. But some hope is on the way. We've been working with the emergency management of Chester County and the Department of Health and setting up the points of distribution for vaccinations across the county. So You know, they said that we should be ready to go as early as November. That's really hopeful, but we understand it's probably January, and with booster shots that will come subsequently after. So we're excited about that, because that information, if we're able to get that moved along a lot faster, we probably will see our school districts. I think 7 out of the 12 right now are virtual. The other 5 are hybrid, and they're working through their school districts, their school boards rather, to come up with a plan. I think that with the disease being unknown, I think it's fair to say we're not sure what will happen, but I do know what we are planning for. We're going to plan for in-person. We know how to do that really well. We also have these hybrid models. We're going to have our first test. We're going to see our test of the hybrid models in some of the school districts across Chester County, but across the Commonwealth, we'll see the effectiveness of it. That could either go 2 ways. That could either go really well, where we'll see schools move from virtual to hybrid and hopefully to in-person, or we'll see some negative effects and we'll see schools move virtual. But I think we're planning for all 3 of those options, and we're going to let the data drive it, and medical professionals advise us on what's best for kids, because as I said earlier, this is a medical problem, and the medical professionals need to weigh in, and they need to be consistent. So we're pushing them on providing good guidance so that we're able to keep staff and students safe.
Thank you very much, George. Troy, you're up.
So the virus gets a vote in all of this, unfortunately, as much as we wish that it wouldn't. It's our hope and desire to be back to full in-person instruction for our students as quickly as is safely possible. But again, the virus is going to determine that, as well as our healthcare system's response to it. We will engage in the same sort of rigorous fact-finding process, taking the pulse of the community, continuing to follow the guidelines and advice of the relevant government entities. So I don't know what the decisions will be. I can tell you that the decisions will be in the best interest of the health and safety of our kids.
Thank you, Troy, very much. With that, we go to Don.
So it's kind of the opposite for us. So, you know, the delivery is nothing new. As I said, we're going to focus on more of the social and emotional piece. But, you know, students that do well in a district school do so for a variety of reasons. It's not just the excellence of the instruction. It is the social interaction, the activities, the sports, all those sorts of things. Students that do well in a cyber environment, that's not in their wheelhouse. It's not what they're looking for. It's not what they need. They need something different. We view this enrollment spike, if you will, as temporary. We view it as families who want to make sure that they're trying to do the best they can for their student, unsure of the unknown, saddled with anxiety, not knowing what's going to happen. Some of them are going to choose cyber because we've been doing it a long time. Okay. But that's going to change. That will go away. Districts will get better. They'll have better offerings. And hopefully, if COVID settles down, students will go back to the districts. We're more in the planning of saying, how do we make sure that we don't bloat ourselves and then have to retract as students naturally return to the place where they're going to do the best, which is in a district school. So for example, one of the strategies that we're looking at is a lot of the teachers that are being displaced from parochial and private schools. Perfect hire for us, because when those schools reopen, I probably won't need them, and I won't have taken someone out of a job with tenure. So we're actually looking at the opposite. How do we make sure that we grow in what we think is a short term in a respectful kind of way that we can back out of without hurting people's careers?
That's great, Don. Thank you very much. Marian.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for including Delaware County Community College in this discussion this morning. We appreciate it. I will say, Chris did allude to this, that our registration for spring begins in mid-October. So we have to have a decision made of what that schedule will look like by September. So this is, again, we are going according to the guidance that we received from the medical professionals, and we have been in the situation where we had to revise a schedule because it wasn't, it was not meeting the needs of the pandemic or our students. So we are we will do our best assessment in September to decide how we will treat January. Ideally, we would all love to go back to a normal schedule, regular schedule, where we are not all virtual. But it does depend on the comfort level of our staff, our students. Our students are showing us now, we have staff on campus for counseling and for tutoring, and the students are 10 a week among all of our 5 campuses. 10 a week are actually on campus. We are handling a lot of this virtually. A lot of our students don't want to come to campus. So at this point, so we are going to really make our best assessment in September.
Thank you. And then Jim.
Okay, so for us, we're ready to go. We're planning right now for our face-to-face, and we are going to evaluate to safely get through the term. We're going to see which best practices emerge in terms of our educational model, what the students want, what is working well, what is not. Same with activities, and what is working, what is not. And maybe actually we'll be in a place to where we can share some practices with my colleagues on the panel and others in terms of what has been successful, what hasn't. We are also trying some things in terms of our aggressive screening in our residence halls, and that we have, if you go into Whole Foods, you see those massive temperature takers, right? So we're deploying those in the dorms so we can actually capture all the students as they walk by. So we're trying a number of different things that I think in the future we can share some results of, but for January, we really hope to replicate what we're doing right now here in August.
Thank you all very much. I'm going to turn the floor over to Dave Hackett. Dave is our chair-elect, and as I mentioned earlier, is an attorney with Cozen O'Connor, and his field of expertise and practice is in employment, human relation issues. With that, Dave, thanks for your support. Thanks for your service to the Chamber. And I know you're going to be speaking on this very subject in the not too distant future, so we thought it was a great opportunity for you to share your insights. Thanks, Dave.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Guy. First, a shout out to Jim Lewis, who I've worked with before in a different forum, and I know that he's used to and does a great job of rising to meet challenges. And so I'm sure Cheyney is ready. And thank all of you for a great panel, for all of you for what you and your institutions are doing to provide quality education. I really thought this was a great session. And certainly what you are doing is, and how we move forward with education is going to affect employees and their employers. As for instance, if you have children who are of elementary school age, how a parent is going to make sure that they are attending their class and learning, and then have the follow-up with them, that they understand what they listen to and do that. Parents are rising up to take care of, as Don called them, their most precious asset. And in doing that, employers are going to have to be able to respond to it, because employees are going to put their children first. And employers are going to have to recognize that and move to pivot to that. A little bit of a shout out. I'll be discussing this a little bit more in depth tomorrow at a webinar that from 1 to 2 o'clock. If you'd like to sign up for it, you can go to www.cozen, which is COZEN.com, and go under events to sign up for our back to school learning to do with the new normal. And we'd love to have you participate. But for instance, there are families who are going and doing, putting together pods so that families are getting together with kids of the same age in order to cover, making sure their kids are educated while also covering their job responsibilities. Employers are going to have to learn how to deal with this. There's the Families First Coronavirus Response Act that applies to employers with 500 or less employees, that provide the ability for employees to take 12 weeks of leave to take care of their child if there's nobody else to be there when their child's home and they need to be there for their child, with 10 weeks of those 12 weeks to be paid. But parents may have already used up that time, or they're going to use up that time shortly. So how do we adopt? Do we change hours. How do we change hours? Do we change shifts? Do we allow people to change shifts, change their day of their schedules, provide access to childcare for their work? Do we provide intermittent leave with a hybrid model? Now, kids may only go to school half a day. So there's a myriad of things that employers are going to have to deal with. And I think that employers are going to have to rise to meet the challenge. To the extent telework can be done, certainly that's excellent and can be done, but there's some jobs that can't be done. And employers are going to have to rise to be creative and get in front of it now to reach out to their employees to understand what their needs and obligations will be come the school year so that they can adapt and make sure that they're retaining quality employees. So with that, I hope that gives a little bit of insight. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, and feel free to participate in our webinar tomorrow. Thank you, Guy.
Thanks, Dave. I want to thank each of our panelists. I want to thank Caitlin, Ganley, and Comcast for being our sponsor, and Caitlin and Dave for their service, not only in this presentation, but as members of our board, members of our executive committee. Also notice that Tom Chimento, Tom is our board chair and an executive with American Water, and Tom was one of our participants taking copious notes, both as a corporate executive and as a parent, I'm sure. I want to thank Tom for his service and participation. Again, we will follow up with all of you. Make sure that you're all connected so you can continue this conversation. This event will also be available for later viewing on our chamber website. Please check our chamber website for upcoming events, including our outdoor barbecue next Wednesday. If you would like to join us on our campus at the Chester County Chamber, we have several acres of township land, so you can be as close or as distant to your nearest hot dog as you'd like to be. I want to again thank everyone for being with us. We look forward to keeping you up to date on this very important topic that's near and dear to our hearts and our economy. Please have a great day, be safe, and we look forward to seeing you soon, if not in person, through our next presentation. Thanks to everyone. Take care.
Thanks.